I went into Inside Job never expecting to relate to it that much. I went in expecting another subpar Netflix comedy a la Big Mouth and Rick and Morty, but I was sorely mistaken. Inside Job is bursting with nuance in almost every way imaginable.
What?
I kind of went in with high expectations because of Alex Hirsch, and to be fair, that's all the media talked about. And I know that going into anything with high expectations is a recipe for disaster, but wow, the show went above and beyond. Not only because Reagan is the most attractive fictional character right now, because the show is written to lull you into this autopilot state, and it gradually wins you over with reference humor that only smart people like I can pick up on, and then out of nowhere, BAM! Generational trauma, BAM! Heartbreak, BAM! Brett, Reagan, your position in #1's challenge. This show is goated for bi people. Speaking of bi, being by yourself, alone, is a theme that has cropped up more and more as the show's progressed. Initially starting off with Reagan being a hopeless romantic that doesn't mentally register the idea of a relationship, and Rand being a single deadbeat dad who is basically just Rick, but eviler. So he's Rick, and Rick's just a really, really evil dog. I don't mind it when a character is one-dimensional, like, it's perfectly normal for a character to be one-dimensional if they're not a member of the main cast. Or in the case of Inside Job, the main cast is so comically large, somebody's gotta fall flat.
It's your excuse.
But we are knee-deep in this show at this point, and Rand's character wasn't explored that much in season 1, to be honest with you. In fact, any expansion on Tamako or Rand was more so used to advance Reagan's character more than anything, which is seen in the show giving me the feeling of secondhand embarrassment so frequently, which I used to interpret as cringy writing. But no, it's just accurate to how I feel in real life regarding interactions with my parents. Speaking of parents, it takes two to tango, and Reagan also's got a mother.
No way!
Who is an actual side character, the mother being called Tamako. I figured that it might have become an issue as I began talking about the show, but another cute little bite-sized thing that I found out as I began jotting my thoughts was that the guise of Cognito Inc. is a jab at circumstantial relationships, and I'm not gonna jump to some wild conclusion. However, I noticed that the only real friendship between the main cast is Reagan and Brett. I'm sorry, but the show leads you to think that the gang, yeah, they're called that, is this tight-knit group of friends, but they don't have any chemistry, to be honest with you, like, none at all. And in season 2, episode 7, they're shown to be selfish and, like, to be blunt with you, dislikable. Whenever I first watched the show, I was so interested to learn about Mike because as a character, he's just a little goofy guy, but I hate him. In season 2, there's an episode dedicated to Mike's reunion, and it's just Mike being rude the entire time, and they're aware of it. I like self-aware shows, but whenever you have a character who literally brings down the entire cast substantially, and then you call it the trait that makes him go down a few notches, and then do nothing about it, like, at that point, why even acknowledge it? Every other character is just a vehicle for a behavior, and they're one-dimensional. You so silly. I still think this after watching 2 seasons. In my experience of watching the show, and rewatching segments for the video, the 3 main characters that matter are Reagan, Rand, and Brett. Rand and Brett are supporting characters, but I've noticed that they've gotten comical amounts of development over the course of the show. Brett's loneliness is related to familial issues, and is the polar opposite of what Reagan and Rand are going through. Instead of a broken family, you have an ideal, perfect image of a family that Brett was bred into. Yeti is cast aside for legitimately no good reason. His family have zero expectations for him. He's invisible, which is played for jokes in the show, and to analyze Brett more, he is a hyperbolic version of a real-life trauma response. Growing up with no expectations can make you feel so worthless that you're going to overcompensate by accomplishing significant feats in attempts to get validation. Yet that validation you want is never going to happen because no one cares! And in Brett's family, there is very little that he can accomplish that his siblings can't. It can be argued that this isn't heartbreak, but I'm going to make a revelation that may impact you big time. Your first heartbreak will likely be from your parents. No, it's not romantic, but the wounds from childhood impact your adult relationships, believe it or not. And I love Brett's character because he openly admits he's a work in progress, mentioning his therapist more than once. Within the show, he is a white, upper-class, charismatic socialite who on paper can accomplish anything. But when you peer behind the blinds, you get to look into this room that is dusty and full of emotional baggage, despite appearing to be flawless, which plays into why I really enjoy this show, because I've never seen the stereotype done before like that. Reagan's dad, Rand, is an objectively bad person, but he is complicated due to reasons that if I took the time to iterate on it, it would bloat the video by 3 times. So I'll restrict it. Erasing your child's memories of having a friend so they wouldn't sink below your personal standards for them, believe it or not, is abusive. And so evil that it had one of the most raw scenes in the entire show where I felt the words emanating through the screen. If it was adhered to, it would have been infinitely more impacting.
which means you are never, ever setting foot in this building or my life again.
Rand is still trying for this life that is not real whatsoever, but instead of doing the personal work he needs to do on himself, and even at that point he has a slither of a chance of actually changing his circumstances, he is willing to sacrifice any and everything for the idea of a perfect life, not the reality and the work needed to make it happen. And even then, some people are just straight up incompatible, which he never factored in. The idea of incompatibility was one that I began to understand in 2022. I knew it existed prior to that, but I lacked the experience to actively begin controlling how I act and choosing compatible partners. This being personified in me going on a self-destructive charade of choosing people who simply just didn't work for me. It's only in the past month that I have internalized and processed this part of myself and began putting logic over emotion in that aspect. But the thing is, with love, you don't often get that virtue, which is what makes the ending of season 2 so bittersweet to me. Reagan possibly being neurodivergent, it's hinted at and insinuated over the course of the show, but it isn't a defining trait at all, just an explanation for why she acts the way she does. She has a strong attachment to her work, which has been hammered in by her dad, which doesn't help her case. And then you've got Reagan's boyfriend Ron, who I never mentioned in the video, because to be honest, I don't think his character is that relevant. There is a reason why he's not there by the end. He is here to move the needle on Reagan's character. That's it. Reagan is the type of character who embodies ambition and is willing to do what is possible to reach the top. On the contrary, you have the opposite in this guy, who hates what he does and wants nothing more than to leave. And sure, they love each other, but that's not enough. And we learned that over the season. Their split was inevitable from their initial interaction, or at least I viewed it that way. You have these two people who on paper are so comically incompatible, yet the emotions are so high, and that is what compels them from the beginning. This sounds like sacrilege, and I hate that I'm saying this because I love their dynamic, but Brett and Reagan are more compatible for a relationship than Reagan and Ron. By the end of season 2, Reagan makes the ultimate decision to leave Ron behind, and leave Ron for him to be happy. At the sacrifice of her own happiness, Reagan then goes back to work to pick up where she left off to do some greater good for humanity. The season ends on this, which is really depressing, but also speaks volumes to Reagan's growth. You know the way everyone's got a fear of turning out like their parents, and how everyone adopts traits from their parents that are out of their control, because as children we absorb what's around us? It's alluded to that Reagan is similar to her dad, and it's a visual gag that is repeatedly used throughout the show, but Reagan is nothing like her dad, and this is shown by her actions. Instead of sacrificing the entire world for a relationship, Reagan put aside a relationship for the greater good, and is self-aware and knows how to do the right thing, and ultimately is capable of change. This is shown time and time again throughout the show, even if it is played up for a joke. For example, in the Keone episode, with Reagan trying to change her view on her mother's relationships, but as a rule of thumb, Reagan throughout the show is displayed as a character that, despite everything she's been through, she has the emotional intelligence and is competent enough to rise to any occasion that is put in front of her. Yes, she can act aggressive and stubborn sometimes, but when the serious moments come, they hit hard. It's beautiful to watch. Speaking of watch my other videos. This video has been brought to you by Patreon. I could not have done it without them, so join my Patreon if you want to. Anyway, bye!